Please welcome to the stage Dr. Casey Lardner, Dr. Valentina Alaasam, and Sam Corbin. My name is Rob Frawley, and I am 1/3 of the Facts Machine by and for people who are curious about everything, but especially the things that make them laugh. We share the fascinating facts that we've discovered and the larger stories behind them, concluding with a pub-style trivia quiz that is, as we say, loosely inspired by the theme. Tonight, that theme is Burrows of New York City, a show paying homage to the city's finest animals. And we are aptly joined by two wildly cool experts and science communicators. Oh boy. Those science communicators, Dr. Casey Lardner and Dr. Valentina Alaasam. And between their facts, you will be riveted by the playful stylings of special game master Sam Corbin. So let's meet our guests. Casey, you are the lab and operations manager at GenSpace in Brooklyn. Can you tell us, is that MySpace for people named Jen, or what's going on over there?
Community biology labs are a place where anyone, regardless of whether you have a background in scientific training, can come to the lab to pipette, work with microbes, sequence something, and just generally create with the life sciences in ways that are not always possible in traditional scientific spaces.
Nice, and that's...
Not MySpace.
So you bring people in, the people go to events, classes, and do the science.
All of the above. We have programs, we have classes, we have trivia nights sometimes.
Ooh, okay.
Yeah, all of the above. You can come take a class, you can come participate in a program. We have a whole menu of things that you can learn about at www.genspace.org/donate.
Wonderful. So I want to next introduce Sam. Sam, I want to pour the spotlight on you, our fantastic game master, multiple-time Punderdome champion, author, and associate writer for the New York Times Games. As a world leader in the field, I wanted to ask you what makes wordplay so interesting to humans?
I think that I talked about Bergson's theory of humor like at a show last week, which is just the whole idea of like incongruity theory is like, you know, if you subvert expectations, it creates a laugh. And I'm usually not so dry in explaining why I like wordplay, but I think it gets to this fundamental thing about like language is the way we communicate, and wordplay is on a basic level subverting expectations like live. So it just excites me. It's like you don't know what's gonna happen.
Nice. I am excited to be subverted.
Amazing.
Before everyone. And last but not least, we have Dr. Valentina Alaasam, a postdoctoral fellow in the Winchell Lab at NYU. Val, you study some of the most graceful living things on the earth. And I want to ask you, why did you then stop studying hellbenders?
That's a great question. Does anyone know what a hellbender is? They're giant salamanders. They live, when I say giant, I mean like probably from the tip of my finger all the way to like my shoulder. They're really big. So they're the biggest salamander in North America. And I reluctantly left the salamander word. The problem is like they're found in a very small region.
Hell,
out
I assume.
in the woods. I was afraid of the bears out there. I keep a toe in that world. I'm actually going to the hellbender conference next month just for no reason.
Where's
just gonna go?
Can we come? Where?
Maybe South Carolina.
Oh, all right.
Is there a conference for like every animal?
I think so, actually.
That's so cool.
People are pretty obsessive about these guys, though.
But why specifically that salamander has its own con? Like, do people come dressed up?
So they were endangered. I think they're still endangered or always on the threatened list, something like that. Definitely the coolest animal to start studying from the get-go. I mean, I actually thought they were really gross when I first saw them. I really wanted to study bears, something cute. But I grew to love them, and it was sad to leave them. I mean, the birds are fine.
We have a lot of good things to look forward to tonight.
Don't tell the birds.
Well, fantastic. Great to have all three of you up here. I think it's time to get to the science. Am I right? All right. So please, welcome to the microphone for our first fact, Dr. Casey Lardner.
I am so glad that Fax Machine has given me a literal stage and a soapbox, maybe, to talk to you about my favorite thing in the whole world, which is wild rats. Oh my God. Really? Okay, because I was about to start this talk being like, I don't think many people in this audience will share that opinion with me, so I wanted to try and find some common ground to start with. So I thought we could start with Pizza Rat.
Yeah.
Yeah, one more time for Pizza Rat. So just in case you don't know who this little fella is, Pizza Rat was a very real New York rat who in 2015 found a large piece of pizza and took it home for dinner. A human New Yorker captured this on video, put it on YouTube, and since that day, 8 years ago or so, it has garnered about 12.5 million views. It was a sensation. I mean, Pizza Rat is relatable. Like, we can relate to Pizza Rat. Like, he's in a hurry. He got takeout for the fam. Like, he is on his way home. So I was researching this, and Pizza Rat was covered in New York publications, but it was also covered in lots of other publications around the United States. But not only that, so real rat, now a meme, right? But it went on to turn into a costume. So like that same year, you could buy a sexy Pizza Rat costume. And this itself was also covered in lots of major publications, the fact that this costume existed at all. And my favorite headline that I found was one from New York Magazine. This headline, Pizza Rat just got slightly sexier.
He didn't have far to climb.
I guess. Yeah, so Pizza Rat just got slightly sexier. But look, Pizza Rat is sexy. I'm just gonna give him another moment. Like, I just love this little guy. Pizza Rat is sexy from an ecological standpoint, from a neuroscientific standpoint. So I'm a neuroscientist. And let me tell you why I think Pizza Rat is really sexy. So when I was in graduate school, I was in a lab that was studying substance use disorders and depression, very uplifting topics. And we were doing this all in the mouse brain. So we were taking these very complex human emotional and behavioral states and modeling them in a rodent, right? And mice and rats, their nervous systems are actually pretty similar to ours. Like, the way their physiology works is very similar to ours, and even their behavior is not so dissimilar from ours. They have to eat, they have to survive, they have to mate, reproduce, they need shelter. These are all things that we have in common. But mice and rats in the laboratory live in the most unrelatable environments of all time. They live in these tiny boxes. Food is always available to them. They don't have to compete for anything. They don't have to compete for mates. They don't have to forage for food. There's really no variability, right? There's no change. There's no uncertainty. And when it comes to studying mental health disorders, uncertainty and variability is really the name of the game. Like, how we cope with stress, how we cope with change is a lot of what our mental health is about. So consider this very colorful diagram about stress. Stress, really, when you boil it down, is just information from our environment telling us how to respond to what's going on, right? So if something is not stressful enough, if you find yourself in this part of the curve that's kind of green and blue, maybe you won't change your behavior. There's nothing motivating or dangerous, right? But in this red corner of the graph, maybe there's loud noises, maybe you're working too much, maybe you're not seeing enough of your friends, maybe you don't have enough money, something's really stressful and you need to try to change something. So stress is just information about how our environments are changing. It's a set of physiological responses, right? So what happens if you, a human, a rat, whoever, spends too much time in this red part of the curve? Well, this is where New Yorkers live.
I was going to say, my anxious brain looks at how far away fatigue is from the end, and I'm like, yeah, we could push further.
You're like, this is fine, right? This is fine. So this is where New Yorkers live. We're all on the same page here. And we have a word for this. You are all resilient. An individual,
Yeah.
One more time for resilience. An individual who can cope with relatively high levels of a stressor is termed resilient. If you can kind of keep on and carry on and wake up with like excitement for some kind of fresh hell, like you are resilient. And everyone this is a spectrum, right? So the opposite of resilience is susceptibility. So this is when you start to respond to stressors by becoming unmotivated, or maybe you get sick, like your immune system is responding. We all fall on the susceptibility to resilience spectrum in different ways to different amounts of stress. But having explained this, I would like to ask you now, have you ever seen a New York City rat having a bad day? Like, have you? Raise your hand if you have. Like, yeah? Okay, I was gonna say maybe you've seen a poisoned rat not having a good day, but they don't have a ton of control over that, so it's a unique situation. Maybe you've seen a dead rat, they're not having a good day. But like a rat that is just in the trash or scurrying along, getting to where it needs to go, like they are fine. They are, Paris Hilton, her words come to mind. They are sliving, they are slaying, they are living. Like, they are the most resilient creatures ever. They are fine. And so I'm just going to tell you a couple of my favorite facts about New York City rats that make them so resilient and make them really good at living here, arguably better than we are. So first, they are really good at digging. So these two photos that you see, they are natural burrowers. They live underground in colonies. So if you ever see a hole in a tree pit or a hole in a sidewalk, this is probably a rat home. We can't do this. We have to live in like increasingly expensive pre-constructed homes.
Although our houses do look like that. Like if that's just $1,500 a month.
Well, yes, that's exactly why I put this on the slide. This is relatable.
That rat has more rooms than I did.
See, they're better at it than we are, or at least as good. Second, they are really natural swimmers. So this is a video of a rat swimming around. They are very good swimmers. Yeah, look at that. I know. They're very good swimmers, and I don't want to make light of this per se, but New York is going to be underwater. Parts of New York are going to be underwater. Like, we're a coastal area, flooding is common, and like, I don't see New Yorkers being able to paddle around like this, like, anytime soon. So they have that on us.
Y'all just got called out.
Rob, I know you're a swimmer, so maybe you're going to disagree with me here. We can chat later.
Me and the rat will be eating that bread.
This is fine. My favorite fact is that they really don't go far. So this actually differs by city, which is also really interesting. So in Denmark, wild rats have been shown to not go so much farther than 80 meters from their home burrows. In London, it's more like 200 meters or so. And since we don't use the metric system in this country, I have provided an illustration of these distances on the screen. And roughly 80 meters is like north to south on a New York City block. 200 meters or so, or 220, would be more like east to west. So New York City rats really don't go far. If you ever see rats in your trash at night on the sidewalk, like, it's probably the same rats. They really are your neighbors, which I just find delightful. So I don't want to make light of the fact that they, speaking of trash, rats are pests. You know, they can cause damage to our infrastructure. They can cause social stress for some individuals. But they are also a very real part of our biomedical research enterprise, right? And so thinking about how they realistically live is important. So the reason I know all of this is because a couple years ago, I was engaged in a very unique form of stress, which is called doing a postdoc. And I was just really, really kind of obsessed with this idea that we are studying complex things in complex animals that are not living in complex environments, right? So I endeavored to catch wild rats and see if I could get them to perform to any degree in a task that we would have a laboratory rodent perform in. And I learned pretty quickly that wild rats are very difficult to catch. They're really smart. Squirrels are not hard to catch. Squirrels are very easy to catch. This is what it looks like when you catch a squirrel. Not what I was interested in studying, but the lab that I was in did. So I actually didn't ever catch a wild rat, which I feel a degree of imposter syndrome, like standing in front of you right now, talking to you about wild rats, and I never caught one myself. But the lab that I was in did. So this is one of the rats that came back to a cage like 8 different times. It's a juvenile female, and the reason she kept coming back is because it was food. Like, they're really smart. Like, who was trapping who? You know? All of this is to say, so I ended up leaving my postdoc before I could really see this research through to a place where I just really see a lot of promise in this idea, this question. I guess you could say that I was susceptible to the stress of being an academic scientist, and I vacated that position. But I still really fervently believe in what we can learn from our resilient rat neighbors. I think it comes down to empathy for me. If we can have more empathy for the way these model organisms live realistically in their environments, maybe that empathy would be reflected in the way we model our own complexities in a scientific setting. So I leave you with this life imitating art, or art imitating life, and just...
Was this taken in the Lower East Side? Because I feel like I've seen that guy on my way to this venue
You probably
several
have.
times.
Yeah, it's performance art.
Has anyone seen? Okay.
So the next time you see a rat scurrying around, don't hate the player. Thank you.
Wow. Thank you. So today I'm going to talk about urban birds. I did ask AI what an urban bird photo, and this is what it gave me. So I think they're all gay. Maybe, not sure. But I think when people think of urban wildlife, mammals get a lot of attention. I mean, people think of rats and raccoons and the coyote. And then when I say I study birds, I get, oh, do you mean you study pigeons? This is, if you guys haven't heard of bagel pigeon, this is the rival for pizza rat. I don't know who's winning in the, I think he's not winning, maybe in the viralness.
He's a bit of an engineer, though.
How is he not more famous? Like,
he's pretty famous. I mean, you just got to fix your algorithm. Be more bird-oriented.
Right, it's me.
Yeah. But then the second thing I get is people telling me about all the species they have in their backyards or front yards or their mom's backyards. And contrary to what you might think, I'm actually not a birder, so I cannot identify any of those birds. But they're, but I do appreciate the birders. For me, I'm just not really. I can't count very well, and I can't remember names very well. I think when you get a PhD, some like basic skills go away. You replace them with niche things. But I do appreciate the birders. That's how I find the birds that I would like to study. Things like eBird. If you guys don't know what eBird is, it's like an online website where people can post when they see a bird, where it is. And according to eBird and the Audubon, there's been like 400 species seen in New York City. So like that's pretty incredible. And here are some of them. Don't ask me to identify them. This is what I call advanced birding. These are all different species that look very similar. This is why I am not a birder, but respect. But what I'm actually interested in is cities. And so I think it's when I learned about nature existing, you heard a lot about these things like climate change and these like pollutants where species far and wide were like slowly in decline. But then you see a place like this, and it's insane. I mean, you were talking about the resiliency of it. Like the just sheer amount of not nature, and basically every pollutant that we've ever invented, I think, is like concentrated and found in a city all at once, which is really intense. And I just got here in October, so I'm very fresh to this. And I can just say, like, the level of noise and light and density of cars and people, like, it's very incredible. And yet, the birds are really making themselves at home. You just put out your stuff, and they just build a nest in it. That's a street light.
That's a guy who lies that he bikes to work. Right?
Yeah, exactly. This is actually one of my favorites. I feel like this dove really won here. Really picked a nice spot.
Mop?
It's a mop. Yeah. Can you imagine that bird finding that and be like, what is this if not the nest for me? They're also eating our food now. So if you haven't seen this video, it's one of my favorites. Sorry about the noise. Yeah, there we go. Just casually walking into the grocery store, casually picking himself out a sandwich. Not the first one. That one had mayo. He wants the other one. Just really trained. It's very cute. He's actually just stands by the door for a few minutes because he's not big enough to like open it himself. But somebody eventually comes and lets him out. So it's a very sweet video. And like I said, so there's a lot of species here. It's not just the pigeons and the seagulls. Like, there's tons of species that live here. And so what my research is about, what I'm really interested in is, like, how do places like this, these kinds of environments, affect the birds that are living here, and in ways that will affect their reproduction and survival, and then like transcend into future populations. That is what AI thinks the future pigeon looks like. I think it's pretty good. This middle part, so like what's happening to the populations, how are they changing, is like I think where a lot of the fun happens. Like I could go on for days talking about all these different interactions between like behavior and hormones and breeding and communication, all that stuff, but I won't. This is also a fun part, is thinking about like how different cities across the world affect populations, because actually cities across the world are more similar to each other in a lot of ways than they are to the very nearby green spaces. And so you see a lot of the different species and the same species like picking up similar traits across the world. But then also there's this kind of notion of like, oh, well, is urbanization like bad for the birds? And I think this is something that like people think, but I'm not sure. I think it's a kind of oversimplification, because they are changing, but we don't really know like who's to say if it's good or bad. There's just like a lot of changes happening. And I think a good example of this is this study that came out recently. So they found higher cholesterol in urban crows, and basically what they did was they fed crows cheeseburgers, and then like they brought the cheeseburgers to their babies, and they measured the cholesterol, and they did have higher cholesterol when they ate the cheeseburgers, but they also had better body condition, which like so in the bird research world, the way that we one of the ways that we assess like how fit a bird is, like how likely it is to survive and like reproduce, is measuring body condition, which is essentially just like BMI. And so we like measure like their weight and their wing length. And so the study was like, well, they have higher cholesterol, but they're actually like, they have better body conditions. They're probably going to survive in the city.
Wait, can we do that?
Right?
Can I just tell people I have high body condition?
It's so, exactly.
Actually, I did
hilarious.
the DNA 23andMe, and it said I have the same muscle structure as an Olympic power athlete. Anyone else? Yes, you know what I'm talking about. A lot of us could be in the Olympics. Please continue.
Yeah, they're changing in ways that will help them cope with the city, eating cheeseburgers. There's also been actually a few studies that found that birds in cities have different songs. And this is also actually pretty common across birds. So like birds in one forest will have slightly different dialects than birds in another forest. And if you like move it, it'll like it'll struggle to communicate with the other bird, even in the same species, or they won't like it as much. It speaks funny. But in cities, consistently, we're finding that birds have higher pitch songs to kind of sing over the low hum of traffic. But this study actually found that during the COVID pandemic shutdown, when all the cities got a lot quieter, they just like went back to normal. So they just like stopped yelling, basically. And we're like, oh, cool. We can like sing normally again, finally. So I thought that was pretty neat. And then there's Flaco.
Aww.
If anyone doesn't know Flaco, there's a Wikipedia page. He is the Eurasian eagle owl who escaped the...
Owl. Flaco,
Yeah.
owl, in parentheses.
Flaco owl. Representative for all owl. The Eurasian eagle owl escaped the Central Park Zoo. He sadly passed away just recently. There was a big memorial, and people national attention, global attention. He even got on SNL, or his widow did. But I'm not going to talk too much about Flaco. What I will talk about is not Flaco's widow, but Flaco's window.
Oh.
Because he died by running into a window. And so it's actually very sad. And when I say there's things about the city that, good or bad, they're just changing, windows are just bad. Just all bad. And so there's actually this website. It's like, so there's, if you don't know about this, it's like eBird, where people record live bird observations, but it's dead bird observations.
Oh, God.
It's morbid, but it's very actually informative and useful. Like, the data's really cool.
For the podcast audience, there's a heat map, and it's basically a dartboard with New York City just looking completely torn up. We are...
Yeah, and if you go on eBird, you'll see there's observations of birds all over, this whole area, but the deaths really are concentrated in Manhattan and, some of Brooklyn and, where the really tall buildings are. And a lot of this death happens during migration periods, so in the fall and spring. And a lot of these deaths happen at night, because 75% of birds that migrate do so at night. And so here's New York. You can see all of these lines on the map are just migratory paths, and New York is kind of right in the middle of a lot of them. And we know that light is actually a problem, because there were studies like this that showed, this study actually got downtown Chicago to turn off half of its lights. And they got 11 times less bird collisions just doing half. So it's pretty incredible. The problem is these lights are very disorienting for the birds. So there's been other studies that show they track birds, and you can see how they're being attracted to the lights. So here is kind of a video where birds are originating from one spot in a nest, and they're trying to make it out to the ocean, which is the bottom left corner. But they're just kind of circling around in these light-polluted areas instead, like kind of going out and then detouring and hanging out in the light. So why do they do this? The short answer is that birds use stars and the moon and things like that to navigate, and light pollution disorients them and reduces their ability to use those cues to navigate. But the long answer requires learning something about bird anatomy. So this is a picture of a bird brain. It's fine for podcast listeners because it's really not informative.
It's just a picture of Noah, everyone.
But basically, so we have photoreceptors in our eyes. Birds do too. Photoreceptors are the neurons in our eyes that detect light. So we have cones that can see yellow, red, and blue. And then birds have an extra one so they can see UV. But we also have photoreceptors that are non-visual photoreceptors. And humans have these deep in our brains. They can detect light, but not color. So just like light intensity. And so humans have them deep in our brains. They basically just get information from our eyes sent to them via, you probably know more about this. I don't know anything about brains, actually, but magic sends signals from our eyes to the neurons.
No, that's 100% accurate.
Okay, cool. But birds have these photoreceptors actually in the pineal gland, which is right on top on the surface of the brain. And they also have hollow bones, kind of. So birds have these air pockets in their bones, which allow them to be lightweight. And so because of that, light can actually go straight through their skull, and they can detect light by these photoreceptors in their brains. So this is why you don't see birds wearing hats. They need that. And also, this is how birds can navigate without craning their neck up to the sky all the time and checking where they are. But it's also why lights for them are very disorienting, and when there's a lot of light pollution, that cue and that ability to navigate, it's all messed up. So my takeaway points here are the birds are figuring it out. They're mostly doing okay, kind of. Go birding, because it's great here. I'm not a birder, like I said, but I do appreciate the data that's being collected, and it's how I do my research. So that data is really valuable. I'm doing a bunch of projects right now just looking at the data that other people collected and where they are and what species are around. And then also turn off your lights. Just do it. Use curtains, because it's the worst. There's so much death that could be prevented. And if you want to know more about what New York City is doing to help with this issue of light pollution and windows, they're doing a lot. So you can go on the Audubon's website. That's all I got.
Woo. Welcome back, everybody. The time has come for your answers. So Noah is going to diligently grade them as the excellent grad student and TA that he was. We're going to go through these together. Our guests have done the same animal-themed trivia quiz that you have. We're going to find out how you did, how they did, and then we're going to get ourselves out of here. So, Val, you were at our show last month. How did that trivia go for you?
So I can really only go up from here. My team got dead last time.
Nice.
But I will say I was setting myself up for improvement, so my self-esteem would be higher today.
That's a perfect way to think about it. Yes.
My teammates are here too from last time, so I think.
Oh, rock on! Okay.
Hopefully,
Beautiful. And now, with the staged lights, you rise to the occasion, I believe, as well. So let's get into our trivia. We had 8 questions, all of them loosely inspired by the theme of urban animals. So let's get into it with your trivia answers. Question number 1: in 1998, DMX in the song "Damien." What animal completes the quartet alongside the snake, the cat, and the dog?
Okay, so we thought it's a rap song. It's going to have rhyme. So we went the snake, the cat, the dog, the rat.
Those are the right animals. It is a rat.
Oh my God.
Believe it or not,
board.
though, it's not the rhyme scheme. If anyone want to sing it with me? Because I believe it's the snake, the rat, the cat, the dog. It's a deep cutting song. It's a grittier version of TLC's Waterfalls, honestly. Living on the Edge of Dark and Evil. Excellent track. And there is the art for the song, The Rat, prominently featured. But yeah, all animals in the city, and a nice way to start the quiz with a throwback. Okay, question number 2, leaning into our sciences here. According to real scientists, in a real paper, which one of these fish evolved to get wider when in urban waterways?
So we started out by trying to pick which fish we thought were real fish.
That's a good start.
Definitely not salmon.
That's just cat food, yeah.
Yeah. And then eventually, with a tiebreaker, I went with the widest answer of letters, which is the black-nosed dace.
Most letters.
Most letters, very wide. Also, I think the dace is a real fish, so we're going to go with that.
Dace is a real fish. All right, audience, how do we feel? Sure. Ambivalent, exactly. Unfortunately, it was the creek chub.
Those both sound so fake. River runt, creek chub.
Chubs in the house tonight. Very nice. So
I want to say what that means.
I'll walk you through.
Our logic was so sound.
It's a cool but non-phenomenal fact, except for the fact that the chub gets chubbier, which is that is a scientific result that I can quote you. The idea here is in cities, there's a lot of paved surfaces. Water flows into the waterways faster. It increases turbulence and change of direction. And the hypothesis was fish will need to have a higher fitness level, resulting in sleeker muscular bodies to adapt to those waterway changes. So the team at NC State ran this study. It was true for a lot of fish explicitly, including, unfortunately, the black-nosed dace, is a much sleeker fish in urban waterways versus natural waterways. Salmon were not included in the study. River runt is a term I made up. That is not a real fish. But it sounds good, doesn't it? That's a good one. But the creek chub, believe it or not, does actually get, as it said here, chubs get deeper bodied to increase stability, which is another great way of saying just chubbier. And I just love deeper body as a term. This is actually a fact that I talked about in an episode on the Getting Fishy With It podcast. If you've not heard of them, check them out. That's also a real podcast. But yeah, so this real study says that there are many ways to adapt to your environment, and they can be exact opposites of one another. So a cool story of urban evolution. Oh, and this is the urban creek chub. You can tell because it's a little bit chubbier than the rural creek chub.
Yeah, he kind of has a cankle.
Yeah, looks like it's seen things, you know? But yeah, less streamlined than their rural counterparts. Okay, question number 3, again for the 90s kids. In the film Homeward Bound, 3 family pets escape a farm and return home. In the sequel, Homeward Bound 2, those same pets get lost in what city?
So for this one, we reached way back into our 90s kids' brains and somehow, this was really just intuition, but we came up with Chicago.
That would be a cool movie. That was actually Home Alone, I think, but
That's what you said backstage.
I know, I did say that backstage.
So
I was like, Home Alone, Chicago.
So unfortunately, and this is one of my favorite movies for whatever reason, it was Home Alone 2, Lost in San Francisco. Yeah, give it up for the West Coast. Okay, so in this movie, Michael J. Fox at his peak, by the way, these 3 dogs escape from, I think, SFO airport, and then you're not really told how get into the heart of San Francisco. And if you've ever been there, there's a mountain range that is not mentioned. But yeah, they do this. They get out in the city. But so if you remember in the first one, there's a scene with Shadow, the older dog, potentially dying in a ditch by the railroad. If you thought that was emotionally charged, the near-death final scene of this movie brings an 8-year-old to tears, I'm told. So definitely check it out. 3 stars, though. Oh, and there, really nice view. In Land's End Park, look at that. They were never there in the movie. Okay, question number 4. Which one of these animals is not named somewhere in the King James Bible?
Okay, so I am Jewish. I'm going to start by saying that. But we thought cardinal, they have those in the Pope system. And then storks are where babies come from, biblically, I don't know. And then we thought ostrich, we were like, who was on Noah's Ark? And we were just picturing all the animals, and we were like, definitely ostrich on Noah's Ark.
Dude,
so
had
that
ostriches,
only
yeah.
left naturally the pelican, our powers of deduction.
I can't really argue the logic on that. I think that's very strong. Unfortunately, the science does not back it up. So the answer was the cardinal. Yeah. Exactly. The most Pope of them all. So, fun fact.
Tricked us.
Fun fact about the Catholic Church and religion. There was a cardinal in white Jesus' Bible, but Jesus lived in the Mediterranean and cardinals do not. And so that whole area is devoid of cardinals. The church formed in Europe. There's a whole cardinal thing. Goths, I don't know, read history. I didn't do it. But so basically, and cardinals are very holy. There's a saying in the Catholic Church, or not in the Catholic Church, adjacent to it, when cardinals appear, angels are near. They're very holy animals in the modern church. And a priest that I once knew actually had a Christmas tree with no lights and no decorations and just 150 small model cardinals that gripped the branches. And it's a beautiful thing, honestly. So they're super religious, but that happened later. All three of these birds, by the way, storks, pelicans, and ostriches, are mentioned mostly in the context of don't you dare eat that. That is the number one thing any of them are in there for. They're oh, you see that? Don't even think about it. Leviticus is pretty strong on that. Question number 5, in what we call a seamless transition. Which NHL team has been named after an animal for the longest period of time?
So for this one, we really didn't know, but I'm just going to be honest with y'all. So I really hope I know this team is real.
Nice. That's a good start.
We determined this team is a real NHL team, and we really hope it's from Pittsburgh, but the Pittsburgh Penguins?
Pittsburgh Penguins. So you deduced this the way that I hoped non-sports fans would, because it is the Pittsburgh Penguins. If you ask a sports question and caveat, make sure it's the one that people have heard of. So only 6 out of the 31 current NHL teams are named after animals. That's actually a low percentage among the big 4 sports. There's a big wave in the 90s of teams being named after animals: the San Jose Sharks, the Anaheim Ducks, the Arizona Coyotes, the Florida Panthers, and then anyone watch hockey in the house?
Arizona Coyotes don't exist anymore.
True. Oh, true. That's right. Utah. It's a new age. He knows a lot more about hockey than I do. The last one listed on a lot of websites is the Buffalo Sabres. Now, sabres are actually pieces of metal that are used in battle. But they have considered an animal mascot because their mascot is the bison because they're in Buffalo. And they chose bison. And there's a lot of confusion around it, but it's typically counted in the list of animals. And for the true fans in the house, the Hartford Whalers, who are technically humans but have whale in the name, they disbanded in 1997, I think correctly anticipating the backlash from the cancel culture against whale exploitation. So yeah, they're ahead of the game. All right, question number 6. And this is a news story, which means that I watch the news sometimes. For the past week, a toddler-sized wild bird named Astoria has been wandering around New York City. What type of bird is Astoria?
So apparently none of us watch the news, but we were trying to think of birds that are toddler-sized.
But for the wrong reasons. They're not just naturally toddler-sized, right?
Well, yeah, we thought maybe it was a toddler-sized bird that we would be surprised to learn it was toddler-sized.
Oh, it was like a little songbird, but it was actually 12 pounds.
Maybe, yeah.
Okay.
But also didn't want to go too far-fetched, and also toddlers vary. I don't know. We all know different. I don't know what the age range for toddlers is, but
yeah, we did spend some time yay big, yay.
We're gonna go final answer with the goose.
Goose. A goose would be a toddler. I think a goose is toddler-sized.
You're not.
I see
You're
some
not happy.
shrugs.
He
Yeah,
said
okay.
would be, which is where he's about to tell us we're wrong.
That is the foreshadowing in my statement. Yes, because actually Astoria is a lovely wild turkey. There we go.
Those are so big.
Yeah, I mean.
Oh, so it's smaller than it's supposed to be?
I suppose. Yeah, it's not an aggressively scary wild turkey. I believe she's an adolescent female. I also don't know who named Astoria, but it kind of reads here like she was just born named Astoria, walked out of the hospital. So this is a cool story of an animal on the loose. They're not all this cool. If you see her, lots of people would like you to DM them immediately. The birders of Instagram want info on Astoria, so let them know. So yeah, this was a thing. And actually, this could have been really exciting because the wild turkey was proposed by Ben Franklin to be the national bird of the U.S. So you could have had this walking down the street as your national bird and felt a sense of pride in your nation. But you probably didn't if you saw Astoria because it's not. Relatedly, though, I saw a bald eagle on 125th Street and also didn't really feel anything. So, no, it was really cool. It was unusual to see them there. But yeah, this is so yeah, text probably someone in the Cornell lab if you see Astoria. All right, question number 7. True or false? 150 million starlings are in the U.S. today, and they all descend from an original 100, released in an 1890 attempt to introduce to Central Park all of the birds mentioned in the works of Shakespeare.
Okay, hearing you read this, I am revisiting the question, realizing all the birds might include other types of birds. But given that, we thought false because I heard this about sparrows, but not about starlings.
Ooh.
So I thought this was a false in the sense that it's the wrong bird.
Okay. There are tricky things. There is a 3-line true and false question, which is fraught with danger.
Possible falsehoods.
Because there's actually only 140. No, I'm kidding. So, in fact, there are 150 million starlings. There were 100 released in 1890. The reason it's false, and it is false, unfortunately, the reason it's false is because there seems to be no indication that the person doing this wanted to emulate the birds of Shakespeare. And if you think that's like a little point. Oh, okay. Well, there's an entire scientific, and I'll say, I guess, academic debate around this. Here are several peer-reviewed papers in environmental humanities, Shakespeare's Starlings, the literary history, and the fictions of invasiveness. This is pulling some quotes from here. This story is considered part of birding's lore. It is almost entirely fictional. There's quite a lot of back and forth in the academic community. A lot of people maybe grew up hearing this, or this is a story that's been passed down. If you take a Central Park tour, they may actually tell you this, depending on who your tour guide is. Yeah. Well, that's why you got to go through the main office. Don't go for the cheap options. But there are people who have lots of feelings about starlings. So some people feel this: the starling possesses an almost unlimited capacity for good. Yeah, that's right. That's why you see them at the food kitchen every Saturday. It's really inspiring, and that's the economic value of the starling. Meanwhile, other people in the academic community walk around with these opinions. It's hard to find anyone with a kind word to say for starlings. Francis of Assisi, if you ever tangled with them, might have even been tempted to whittle himself a slingshot. Yeah, this guy's coming. So, and yeah, that is in The Plague of Starlings. So there's some pro-starling, anti-starling rhetoric being tossed around. But most importantly, that study kind of went through all the sightings of the birds, all the resources. There's actually a guy who introduced them, like the person who did that actually did release about 100 in that year. And the legend became it was a Shakespearean thing. None of his letters indicate that. They really went through this guy's mail. But yeah, they found no legitimate source that it was a Shakespearean inspiration. So sorry to catch you on a technicality, but yeah, next time you see a starling,
We got it
remember.
right.
Yeah, we got it right.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, congratulations on not getting caught on a
Thank you.
technicality.
Thank you.
That's true, and I will need your score at the end too. So that's good that you're keeping track.
Oh, I think we've got all of them so far.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, our last question, question 8. Which one of the following cities with animal names did I make up? Was it Penguin, Tasmania, Australia, Salmon Arm, British Columbia, Canada, Elephant Butte, New Mexico, USA, or Kiwi on Kiwi, Tongariro, New Zealand?
Yeah, so we went through this one by feel, one by one. So we thought that Penguin, Tasmania, sounds like a real place. Salmon Arm, British Columbia, definitely a real place. Elephant Butte, New Mexico, definitely a real place.
Okay.
And Kiwi on Kiwi, not a real place.
Okay. I just traveled to New Zealand for the first time. It was very exciting. And I went to Tongariro, and there's no Kiwi on Kiwi. Nicely done. I thought it sounded cute. This fact was really just an excuse to tell you about the city of Elephant Butte, which, if you see the shadow here, elephant butt, let the fun begin. Really. And the best part is, if you go to their website, they don't get the joke. They really don't know. So I highly recommend swinging through here the next time you're in the Southwest, just for a quick stop in Elephant Butte. All right. How did you all do?
I think did we get 3, right?
Maybe 4?
I think very
We
well.
got the
I think
rat,
very well.
1, penguins, 2.
penguins,
So.
false, and the last
We
one,
got 4
Nice.
out of 8. Wow.
So let me run through. We have a couple for your results from the crowd.
Average.
A couple honorable mentions for team names. The Well-Fed Rats, give it up. Hellbenders, nicely done. The Quizzly Bears, always very fun. And the Blunt Force Drama. Yes, very good. Our first place team, the team that actually got 6 correct here and aptly named, had no egrets. Very nice job, no egrets. We will find you after the show. Also here at Fax Machine, we like to do a thing where not just the team that knew the most gets recognized, but also the team that learned the most. And there was a team that learned, in fact, everything. And so, with 8 new pieces of information, congratulations to Team RAP. There it is. Beautifully done. So that, in front and center, it wasn't that you couldn't read it. It was just beautiful. So that's it for now. Thank you all so much for coming out. I hope you follow us on Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter at Fax Machine Pod. Go listen, rate, and subscribe to Fax Machine wherever you listen to podcasts. Also, come hang out with us at the after party down the block. We'd love to talk to you about the merit of a ferret, how cute is a newt, and other animal puns we didn't get to use. Casey, do you have anything you want to plug while we are closing out?
I'll just close by plugging GenSpace again. It's a nonprofit community biolab in South Brooklyn. It is open to everybody, not at all times. Please don't come in the middle of the night. I will not be there.
Check the website
if
first.
you want to come during working hours and get creative with science, we would love to see you there.
Amazing. Val, is there anything you want to talk about?
Yeah, so I think there's QR codes on most of your tables. I'm trying to study New York hummingbirds. I did not talk about that today, because I have not done it yet. But I think there are hummingbirds here. So if you have a hummingbird feeder in your yards, or if you know somebody that does in the city area or around the city area, anywhere within like an hour of here, sign my little survey and maybe I can come to your house and study your birds. Thank you.
Amazing. And Sam, do you have anything going on that you want to share?
Yeah, once a month I co-host a language variety show, wordplay variety show called Vocabaret. Our next one it's the second Friday of every month. Our next one is Friday, and the theme I won't say out loud. It's fuck. The theme is fuck.
Thank you. Awesome. And if you like tonight, great news. We do this show right here at Caveat every third Thursday of the month. So our next show is on Thursday, June 20th at 7 p.m. And it'll be loosely inspired by a mysterious group of cephalopods, octopus, squid, cuttlefish, and the like. So thank you again. We'll see you in a month. And give it up one more time for our guests, Sam, Casey, and Val.